I don't know how he got a title shot. 22 0-1 with 20 KOs. His name is Prince Charles Martin. He's 6'5", about 250 pounds or so, and he's an Al Heyman fighter. Now let's go over his last three fights. His last three fights was against a guy by the name of Vicente Sandez, who was 15-4 coming in. Before that, Tom Dallas, who was 17-4 coming in before the defeat, and Rafael Zambano Love, who was 35-9-1 before he was defeated by Charles Martin. And I'm thinking, who in the hell got this guy a title shot? Listen, I'm T Street Controversy. This is T Street Controversy Live. I cover every single major fight live. I'm going to get a chance to interview Charles Martin next week. And there's a lot of questions I have for him because he is fighting Vyacheslav Glazkov for the IBF Heavyweight Championship of the World, which belonged to Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury dropped the belt. Well, he was stripped because he wouldn't fight Glazkov next because of some contractual shit with Klitschko having a rematch clause. Long story short, you get Charles Martin versus Glazkov for the IBF Heavyweight Champion of the World. So Charles Martin could be the Heavyweight Champion of the World with the IBF, and nobody knows who he is. You know, I guess that's my job to educate, but it's like, even when it comes to watching his fights, I only got to watch 2 of his fights, and they were in bad quality on YouTube. So I'm thinking to myself, well, this guy's getting some major exposure, thank you, Al Heyman, because he's the co-feature in Barclays Center to Deontay Wilder versus Artur Szpilka. So I'm thinking to myself, well, if Charles Martin wins this IBF title, where does he go from there? Now, I pretty much know Glazkov is going to, with main events, they're going to take him the path of fighting the IBF top 15 guys. But I'm thinking the same thing for Charles Martin. In fact, let's look up the IBF rankings for the IBF. Now, Deontay Wilder, if he wins against Artur Szpilka, he has to fight Alexander Povetkin. If he wins the Alexander Povetkin fight, which will happen sometime in April or May of this year, 2016, then he could possibly use his voluntary to fight Charles Martin if Charles Martin wins, and either Charles Martin or Deontay Wilder will go on to be a unified champion, have the WBC and the IBF title, and it's an easy fight to make. But I don't think that Al Heyman or Charles Martin, or Al Heyman advising Charles Martin, will throw Charles Martin into the deep water as far as having him fighting these top guys, because he's got to get known first. You know, people don't know who he is. Now, the IBF right now, okay, put it this way. Maybe I don't think that he'll fight Klitschko. I don't believe that. Okay, put it this way. If Vladimir Klitschko defeats Tyson Fury and gets his WBO and WBA title back, he will likely try to fight either Deontay Wilder or Charles Martin for that WBC or that IBF, since he took that loss to Tyson Fury. He's probably thinking to himself, okay, well, this is my last chance to become undisputed champion, and he's only going to go after big fights, or if not big fights, then collecting his belt. But for some reason, you know, I'm feeling that if Charles Martin wins, he's going to be the IBF champion and nobody really knows, and he's going to be featured in some PBC super heavyweight fights, but they're going to be fights against fighters that we don't know either. So, you know, and then the thing is, watching him, he's not a very technically sound boxer. From that, I know I'm being a little harsh, but I can call him like I see it. He's not the fleet of foot. He's not a very exciting looking fighter. And I'm thinking, you know, it's going to be tough to market this guy. But the IBF rankings right now are pretty stacked. You know, and with the IBF, they make you fight. Put it this way, you get one voluntary, and then you have to fight your mandatory, or they will strip you. So it's looking like when it comes to the IBF, who's next in line? Let's see. It depends if Steve Cunningham, you know, all the guys that, for example, you got Vladimir Klitschko on the list. You got Erkan Teeper, but he's suspended because of steroids. You got Artur Szpilka, who's fighting Deontay Wilder. You got Steve Cunningham, but he's moving back down to cruiserweight. You got Anthony Joshua, who Chris Martin don't want to see no parts of. But in my opinion, Anthony Joshua will likely guard the Deontay Wilder, Alexander Povetkin route because he's next in line for that title. Who else is on this list? Joseph Parker, New Zealand, very good fighter. Top ranks Andy Ruiz, Bermain Stavern, Kubrat Pulev. You know, the IBF is some pretty tough fights for Charles Martin. You know, it's going to be interesting to see where he goes from here. You know, but anyway, I'm going to be covering the fight. I'm going to be there. I'm T Street Controversy. This is T Street Controversy Live. I know I didn't talk too much about Zara Glazkov, but the same opponents await him as well. And Zara Glazkov, in my opinion, is the favorite from overall boxing ability and resume. He did have that crazy draw that really shouldn't have been a draw, in my opinion, against Malik Scott. Also, the fight with Steve Cunningham, where, in my opinion, Steve Cunningham should have won that fight. But from what I've seen from him and having more footage to be able to watch Zara Glazkov is a couple of levels, well, maybe one, if not two levels above Charles Martin. Just my opinion. But the height of Charles Martin may bother Zara Glazkov. I believe Zara Glazkov is on like 6'2" or something like that. But Charles Martin just doesn't look like a fighter that throws a lot of punches. And when it comes to his 22 wins and his 20 knockouts, it seems as though he's just been knocking out lower caliber opponents than Deontay Wilder before Deontay Wilder got a title shot. And that's something right there. So I'm T Street Controversy. This is T Street Controversy Live. I cover every single major fight live. Please subscribe.